Hi Year Nines, welcome to our flip lecture on the long-term causes of World War One. So when we talk about the long-term causes of World War One, we talk about the main causes. That is the militarism, the alliances, the imperialism, and the nationalism. These are the broad overarching factors that influenced Europe in the pre-war years. It set the scene for the tensions in Europe, and I suppose Europe was just waiting for something to ignite these tensions for a kind of conflict to start. So when we look at them, we're going to look at them in reverse order because it makes a little more sense that way, and I suppose the issues of a bit more importance when you put them in reverse order. So first up is nationalism. Nationalism is basically the sense of pride and love of one's nation. It kind of develops from having a shared language, culture, and history. Nationalism had a big influence in Europe in the late 19th and the early 20th century. It can be something which unites or divides a country or a region. If we're to think about examples in terms of World War One, we can think about how nationalism encouraged cooperation between Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And the reason that is because the German language was shared with the rulers of both Germany and Austria-Hungary. So it helped develop some friendships and some feeling of togetherness between those two countries. Nationalism also had a big role to play in Bosnia and Herzegovina too. You can see there it's in the light blue, roughly. So Bosnia and Herzegovina was part of Austria-Hungary, but the people of Bosnia were from many different ethnic groups, including Bosnians and Serbs and Croats, and so they didn't really see themselves as being linked with Austria or Hungary in terms of their sense of nationalism, but more with the neighbouring Serbia, which you can see there in the yellow. So many people wanted to form a new nation with Serbia. That's the people from Bosnia and Herzegovina. So that's all about nationalism. The next element we'll talk about is imperialism. Imperialism is the policy of one country extending its territory to create an empire, and usually this is for financial or for strategic reasons. The European powers had colonised much of the world between the 15th and the 19th centuries, and that obviously included Australia. Many European empires still had strong colonies in the late 19th century, around the time before and leading into the start of the war. We can see some of them here. So there's the British Empire, a rough idea of what the French Empire and the German Empire would look like. And in the late 19th century, what is known as the scramble for Africa was occurring, with lots of European and other powers trying to colonise various bits of Africa and get as much of it as they could for themselves, as you can see in this funny little cartoon here. And so that was the kind of new wave of imperialism. Now, as we saw before, Britain, France and Germany had really strong colonies, had quite strong colonies, and they were the main rivals for the new colonies in Africa. Britain had the largest empire, and France was really strong as well, but compared to them, Germany didn't have quite a stronger empire because it was quite a new nation, and they were still trying to build up their colonies. So they're interesting things to consider when we talk about imperialism. Okay, so the next point for us to look at is about alliances. An alliance is an agreement between two or more nations to help and defend one another when that's necessary. And so the alliance system is really one of the key reasons why World War I was such a big deal and why it involves so many countries from around the world, because the alliances drew all the different countries into being involved with the war. Since 1879, key nations had grouped themselves into two main alliances. So there was the alliance of the Allies, which was Britain, France and Russia, and then the Central Powers Alliance, which was Germany, Austria-Hungary and Italy. We'll have a look at them now, shall we? So in 1879, Germany and Austria-Hungary formed an alliance, and then in 1882, Italy joined to become a part of that alliance as well, and that was known as the Triple Alliance, or the Central Powers. Meanwhile, in 1894, France and Russia had formed an alliance, and then in 1904, France also formed an alliance with Great Britain. In 1907, these countries all came together to form one alliance, and they were known as a Triple Entente. One of the keys about this alliance, however, is that Britain in particular brought with it the strength of a number of other countries. So because of its empire, Britain's involvement in the alliance also implied the involvement of its dominions and its colonies, so including Australia, New Zealand, Canada, British India and South Africa. But Britain also had an alliance with Japan. So if Britain was to get involved in the conflict, Japan was on its honour to be involved as well. And so that brought Japan into being involved in the mix too. Now, as Russia was seen as Serbia and Bosnia-Herzegovina's kind of guardian, that meant that their involvement was also implied with Russia's involvement too. So you can see that the alliances had a big impact on just the number of countries that got involved in the war and why it was such a total war or a world war. The next point we look at is militarism, which is the belief that a country should maintain a strong military capacity. And that's relevant for even in times of peace. So while in the late 19th century and the early 20th century, Europe was claiming that they weren't preparing for war. They were talking all about peace. They were also, most of the countries in Europe were also training armies and building their stores of weapons and other military supplies because of this militarism kind of belief. And it became kind of an arms race with countries wanting to have the best military and be the most prepared in case there was a war. Britain and Germany were leading the arms race in their own ways. So Germany had a very large army and was a strong economic power, so they had a lot of money to put into their military, whereas Britain had a really strong navy and they kept building it throughout this time of peace in Europe. So that's a little bit about that concept of militarism. So they're the four main points that we need to consider when we talk about the long-term causes of World War I. So we can remember them by the acronym MAIN, and that is MAIN: militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. Now don't forget to have a go at the quiz that we've put on Moodle, and we'll look forward to exploring these ideas some more with some activities in class this week. Thanks guys!